Today we're going to be talking about density. Density is an intensive physical property that is the ratio of the mass of an object to its volume. And there's three variables that are used when we calculate density. They're pretty easy to remember. D is for density, and that's measured in grams per centimeter cubed or grams per milliliter. 1 centimeter cubed is the same as 1 milliliter. There's also M for mass, which should be measured in grams, and V for volume, which is measured in centimeters cubed or milliliters. And the equation for density is written down here. It is D for density equals M for mass divided by V for volume. Now, something we're going to be using in this class is called the GUESS method. GUESS is G-U-E-S-S, and that stands for given, unknown, equation, substitution, solution. And it's just the order of things that we do to solve a problem using math. So the first thing is givens. Givens are the things that are told to us in the question. So we better go ahead and read the question. It says, what is the density of a metal that has a mass of 200.43 grams and a volume of 4.50 centimeters cubed? Okay, so we're going to look through that question and try to find some information, some numbers. And the first number we come across is this one, 200.43 grams. And now we have to decide if that is going to be a density, a mass, or a volume. Now, 200.43 grams is a mass because grams is the unit of mass. And you can see that already written for you over here. So in this little blank, we're going to write 200.43 grams. Okay, the mass is 200.43 grams. And then we keep reading the question and we come across the volume, which is 4.50 centimeters cubed. So over under volume down here, we're going to put 4.50 centimeters cubed. All right, and then you'll always have one thing that you don't know yet, which here's the density, and that is the unknown. So down here under unknown, we're going to put D for density. And you can read in the question, it asks, what is the density? So everything's working out great. Now over here in equation, we write down the equation we know. And it was on the last slide. It's D equals M over V. Now sometimes, not in this particular question, but sometimes you'll have to rearrange that equation to solve for something new. So if you have to do that, we'll put it in the equation box. We're not going to do that till the next example problem. So after you write down your equation, next step is substitution. Substitution means you just plug in the numbers from your givens into your equation. So for example, for D, we don't know anything, so we're just going to put D. But for M, we know a number. M was 200.43 grams. So in place of M, down here in substitution, we're going to put 200.43 grams. Perfect. And for V, in our givens, it was 4.50 centimeters cubed. So on the bottom, we're going to put 4.50 centimeters cubed. So all that's left is for me to type that into a calculator. 200.43 divided by 4.50. And when you do that, you get 44.54, and the unit for density is grams divided by centimeters cubed. And that's all there is to it. All right, next question. A sample of aluminum with a density of 2.70 grams per milliliter is placed into a graduated cylinder. The displacement of the water was 5 milliliters. What is the mass of the piece of aluminum? So first step in the guess method is finding the givens. So we're going to read back through the problem and look for the givens. A sample of aluminum with a density of 2.70 grams per milliliter. It told us the density. So we're going to write over in the givens a density of 2.70 grams per milliliter. Sorry, this was supposed to be capital D and I was supposed to change it, but my bad. It's the same thing. Okay, so density equals 2.70 grams per milliliter. And that's placed into a graduated cylinder. And we're seeing the displacement of the water being 5 milliliters. Okay, so 5 milliliters there is a volume, because volume has the unit milliliters. So down here over in givens, next to volume, I'm going to put 5.00 milliliters. And the thing that's left over, the thing that we don't know yet, is the mass. So down here under unknown, I'm going to put mass. And you can read the question. It says, what is the mass of the piece of aluminum? So now we're going to move on to the next thing, which is the equation. We've got the same equation written there, D equals M over V. But the problem is this time we're trying to find mass. So our equation has to be modified a little bit. We have to get this variable M by itself. Right now it's got this other variable V on the same side, and we've got to get that out of there. So what we have to look at is what V is doing. Right now V is being divided. To get it out of there, to get it off of that side, we have to do the opposite of division. So since it's divided, the opposite of division is multiplying. So we're going to multiply by V on both sides. Because what you do on one side, you have to do on the other. Okay, so the V's on the right cancel out because you're dividing then multiplying, and you're left with M by itself, which is what we want because we're trying to solve for M. So we put M equals V times D as our equation. And that's something we can substitute into, which is the next step. Now to substitute, we always just rewrite the unknown variable. We don't have anything to substitute for it there. So we'd put M equals V. And the number for V, which we find back over here in the givens, is 5.00 milliliters. Now you do have to be sure to put your units with these things. It's important. So you get 5.00 milliliters times the density, D, which is 2.70 grams per milliliter. And now we get to do that on the calculator. So I'll type in 5.00 milliliters times 2.70 grams per milliliter equals 13.5. So that's going to be our solution down here, 13.5. And the unit for mass is grams, and you can see that the substitution works out because the milliliters multiplied and the milliliters divided will cancel, and you're left with just the unit of grams. So in the end, we get the mass of 13.5 grams. All right, now we got one last question. It asks for the volume of a metal that has a density of 19.30 grams per centimeter cubed and a mass of 3.80 grams. So we're going to go through, find our givens. The first given is a density of 19.3 grams per centimeter cubed. So I'm going to go ahead and go write that in the givens. Sorry, it should still be a capital D. 19.30 grams per centimeter cubed. And if we keep reading, we'll find a mass of 3.80 grams. So that'll go down here under mass, 3.80. And the thing that we're looking for that the question asked is what is the volume? So V goes down there for unknown. That's the volume. Now, over on equation, we've still got the same thing, D equals M over V. But this time, the variable we need by itself is V. So we're going to have to solve for that. And it's a little bit weird. Now, there's several ways to solve for V here. So if you use one that's a little bit different than mine, that is okay, as long as you end up with the same equation. But the way that I look at it is that anytime you have something on the bottom of a fraction, or solving for the thing that's on the bottom of the fraction, you multiply by it on both sides, and that gets it out of the bottom. Some people call this cross multiplication. So if you cross multiply here, that's totally fine. So if we multiply by v on both sides, just like we did in the last equation, we get v out of the bottom, and it ends up over here on this side, right there. Okay? So now I'm going to rewrite that as v times d equals m. Okay, so we've got one more step to get to v being by itself. Right now, we've got v and d multiplied, and we want v by itself. So to undo a multiplication by d, we have to divide by d on both sides. So in the end, this equation reads v equals m over d. And that's the equation we're looking for. V equals m over d. I'm going to erase this work real quick and rewrite that just so we can see it. And that is v equals m over d. So now we can substitute into that. V is our unknown, so we leave it like it is. And for mass, we'll put in 3.80 grams divided by d, density, 19.30 grams per centimeter cubed. So once again, all we have to do is type into the calculator 3.80 divided by 19.30, and we end up with 0.196, and we'll leave it at that. I guess we should probably round up to 0.197 because it's an 8 there, you know. That's the rounding rule. We're going to round it up to 0.197, and that is centimeters cubed for volume. So hopefully now you know how to calculate density using the guess method. There is a worksheet in Google Classroom for you to complete using this method. Thanks for watching and have a great day.